I do think that we have reached some kind of maybe not a solution, but we're moving in that direction. It's also an extremely important part of this legislation, and I know that the legislator really wants us to solve it. So we can't leave the standard before we solve that one. Quality control, already talked about that. That is not in the legislation. It doesn't really say that the captions need to be good, or that it doesn't say anything about quality. It talks more about equality. So if information is really hard to understand, well, that is covered, but it should be equally hard to understand for everyone. Is more the what you can push for in this legislation. And also it's the same with the standards. It rarely talks about quality, which I think is something we need to work on in the upcoming years. Also, the end user involvement, I think, is still lacking in many organizations. And to me, that is really one of the reasons that technology looks the way it does today, because if more things were developed with the end users in mind and really based on user needs, then we would for sure have much better products and services around us. So I always want to end when I talk about the Accessibility Act with this quote, maximizing the foreseeable use, because that is a recurring message of the legislation. And I think this is the best way to sell accessibility. Also, if you want to make sure that product owners or service providers don't really see the point or do not understand why accessibility is important, it has to do with maximizing the foreseeable use of your product or service. And I think with that, it's much easier to make people do the right thing than just pushing legislation in their heads, because that is, even if it's useful and it works, and the risk of penalties and so on can be very useful, still I think we need the creativity and innovation that comes from understanding that we do this for people and not just because it's written in some kind of law or standard. So we take questions in the end. So I say thank you for listening and leave it back to Alf.
Well, thank you very much, Susanna, for a very interesting and very sort of good overview of the European Accessibility Act. I think maybe we should have started with your overview. It was very good, I think. And a short remark here, you mentioned a few of the standards that are important, and you mentioned one on the built environment. And for the audience of this webinar, we do have an article on this this standard, the EN 17210, on the accessibility and usability of the built environment. We do have an article on that one on the FO webpage if you want to know a little bit more about them. That standard that has some interesting features for hard of hearing when it comes to induction loops and acoustics and so on. And yes, we will come back to you, Susanna, later on questions and the issue on how do we sort of get to access all these new features that are there and will be coming. That I think is a very important question. You especially mentioned also captions, subtitles in TV broadcast and that kind of issues. And the next speaker now, our France expert, Mathieu Parmentier, he will speak a little bit more in detail about TV and subtitles, captions, and how we can make use of them. So the floor is yours, Mathieu. Welcome.
Thank you, Alf, and thank you everyone for inviting me there and participate to this small presentation about our concern about our hearing audience in TV. For sure, each countries in Europe, each country doesn't have the same power or the same lobby concerning the hard of hearing situation, and we are very lucky in France because the lobby of hard of hearing people is very high, and this is why we are doing a lot for several years now. So I'm really happy to share that with you right now. If I am focusing on about 70 million people in France, we have more or less 10 million people with hard of hearing issues. And among them, we have probably 3 to 3.5 million of people that really need closed captioning, so really hard of hearing subtitling to watch our TV. So it's an important amount of people. It's a market. So that's why also now more and more private companies, like for example, advertisement companies are now really looking at this potential people to really send their message to the widest audience, including these people. So it was not that even 2 years ago. So that's why I'm really insisting about this this way of making this cause more and more interesting and necessary for everyone. And we have also the chance, we are really lucky in France to have a law which forces television, national television, to be really accessible to hard of hearing people as soon as they go beyond 2.5% of overall audience. And we have finally defined in 2011 a quality chart, quality charter to say how we are able to produce very, very good closed captions. So I have here 2 screen capture of hard of hearing subtitling we are pushing and we are creating every day at France Television. The charter itself is also a 3 pages thing where you can precisely catch the 16 quality points which are very important to make your closed caption serving the audience. And then now what we are doing at France Television Access, so we are producer of hard of hearing subtitle every day. This is how we could really simplify the quality assessment of our production in order to go to a sort of European acceptance and common rules and potentially European charter for defining what could be a good quality of subtitles. So if I am now focusing on a very simple concepts to look at the real important detail that serve the audience, we have 5 criteria which are very, very important for us. It's about meaning, the respect of the meaning, the synchronization with the audio and video, the speaker change, which is very, very important. We are doing a lot of news content, a lot of politic debates. It's so important for the democracy to really know who said what. And today I am insisting on this speaker change function because when looking at automatic solutions, this is where they don't really progress if I'm looking at the last year's improvements. The reading time is also something which is very important as our population is getting older. It's important to keep the time for reading the subtitles. And finally, the comfort. This is where we could have local adaptation. The way, for example, French people are using the colors is not the same that the British or potentially other countries. And it's very important to ease like that, to bring some more comfort to be sure that the message is perfectly understood. And when I'm looking to the action of automatic tools, because we are using a lot of AI in our workflows now every day to produce better, to produce quicker our closed captions. We only have, let's say, 2, nearly 3 criteria that we are able to assess automatically. And that means that today, for example, I don't have a reference AI which is able to help me for the speaker change criteria, neither the meaning. And even for the comfort, I need to have a sort of human-assisted evaluation to be sure that my comfort criteria is respected. If I am insisting so much on the quality, is that this is how we really deliver and serve the audience. And today, because we are not able, even in France, to guarantee the quantity of hard of hearing accessibility, our regulator, so in France, this is the ARCOM, it's the national regulator for all the televisions. It's still very focused on the quantity. Even the little television, the regional TVs, they are doing a sort of lobbying to be sure that they are going in the direction of making their program accessible. So today it's still the era of quantity. We need subtitles everywhere. So it's not the era of quality. And I think that it could be great if we deliver a European act to have the both dimension at the same time, because it's really, really simple to make a bad subtitles that doesn't say everything or doesn't give the words to the good speakers, or to reverse the meaning. It's very easy with automatic subtitling, for example, to forget a negation and really change the meaning. So that's why I'm really insisting on quality. And finally, if I am at the place of the regulator, it's very difficult to welcome the critics from the hard of hearing audience, because the hard of hearing audience in France, they only watch the program that are accompanied with a very good subtitling. So that means that the companies like my company, France Television, who is really delivering a good hard of hearing subtitling, it's the only one watched by the hard of hearing audience. And so we are the only one which are criticized about the quality of our subtitling. So it's very important to enlarge the vision and to see how it's also possible to assess the quality of everyone and all the offers. Finally, I want to focus on for example, one comfort aspect of subtitling, the respect of the language units. It's something we are really confident on the fact that it brings a lot of comfort and a quick understanding of the TV show, and so it gives sometimes to the user to watch the picture because the reading is very quicker. And this is, I think, something that you can really easy catch. And finally, we are also working a lot in the AI aspect, especially AI assisting tools for creating and producing closed captioning. And today, when we compare the hybrid human and AI production on the left and the fully automated AI production on the right, we are absolutely not in a comparable solution, a comparable efficiency. We have still strong technological locks on the AI side, even it goes beyond every year. But honestly, this speaker changes issue is important for better checking the language detection, better represent the multiple speaker scenes, and also all the range of adaptation and placement and any kind of small comfortable function that could help people to better understanding is actually highly needed today, and we're still working hard for this aspect of technology. So this is also where we have to insist on the minimal quality requirements to be sure that we are choosing the right tools for delivering an audience that needs sufficient respect. This is what I can say in a few words, and I will be accompanied by my colleagues to answer the question you should have on these really interesting topics. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you, Mathieu, for giving a good overview and some good raising questions on the importance of quality on subtitles. Like Susanna earlier said, the automatic captions is growing and they're getting better, but we must make sure that we have sort of quality measurements that they are sort of good enough and that they are understandable and usable for people who are hard of hearing, because we are, as we know, more sensitive to some kind of language flaws that can be in like you made in your presentation. And also nice that you have looked into the automatic captions and noted how the problems there are there. I think, like you said, this who says what is very important when it comes to TV captions, and so far the automatic captions have problems with showing the audience who is saying what. Well,
Just
Mathieu?
add a word. I'm sorry, Alf. I just forgot to say also that as a TV, we are, and it's the same for radio also, but we are really focused on the news. We are very welcome to do that everyday report. And the problem about the news is that every day the events, the people, the places, the organization that are arising in the news, they are not already in the training corpus of AI. So a lot of proper names are not today recognized by our AI, because it will be only recognized in a few days, the time necessary for training and retraining the AI model. So that's why also for the news program, it's always tricky. We need to add people for being sure that all these proper name of the day are correctly understood.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, then we will let in all the speakers to discuss some of the questions we have got in the chat today, and some of the questions I have on my own as well. So if Mathieu and Susanna and Sabine all will be showing their videos, the first question I would like to raise on you is that I want you all three to give your personal view is on what is the greatest flaw with the European Accessibility Act. What is really missing, and what would you like to see in the next step? And if you can have an angle on view on what is important for hard of hearing persons, it's of course very, very appreciated. So I will start with you then, Sabine. What do you think is the thing that is missing, and what would you like to see as the next step?
Okay, that is a tough one, Alf, because as industry, we're never asking for more regulation, usually not. No, it's really a tough one. I think, but maybe from the perspective, and I know that has been discussed in the disability community as well, that some product categories are very related to what we already have in the scope, but have been left out, which is not really logical because they sort of fit into the whole value chain. So that would be some of the additional technology in smart homes. Or I know a big point was, for example, the white goods. So the smart fridge, the smart washing machine, whatever. And probably would have been logical to include them, you know, that might not be so relevant for the hard of hearing community, but for the blind community, for example, because they sort of fit all together. Many of them can be or should be, you know, manipulated with the smartphone as universal remote control. So I think from that perspective, maybe we also were astonished that some of the product categories that are very close were not in the scope. So I think that would be one point missing. Otherwise, I think we're pretty much covered.
Okay, well, the consumer goods, as a hard of hearing person, the speaking loudspeakers, I could speak to my loudspeaker and it answers me, but I cannot text my loudspeaker and it getting an answer, and I cannot text my fridge and get an answer. But I can speak to my fridge and get an answer, but I don't understand what they say. So I think we really need accessibility in that area.
Yeah. Fair point, Alf.
Yeah, so I think it was a good point you made there. Let's make it then for the fridges, the accessible fridge. Susanna, what would be your sort of what's missing and what would you like to see?
I now have an image in my head that I cannot get out, and that's when you're standing and talking to your fridge, and I wonder what the fridge is trying to say to you, even if you can't hear it. I wonder if it's really an interesting discussion, but it is a tricky question. I think what I find is most problematic is that the micro enterprises providing services are not covered. It makes sense, and I understand why they are not covered, but there are, I don't have the number, but really many companies that are micro companies in Europe. So this, I think, from a user perspective, is problematic. I don't think this will change, and I do understand why they are omitted, but I think it's a problem. When it comes to the kind of the user perspective, I think the cognitive parts are the most what is really missing. It says a little bit about understandability in the requirements, but this could be much better explained and much more detailed, I think, because both in the existing and upcoming legislation, as well as in the standards, cognition is really, to me, the kind of the missing piece that we still haven't gotten around. And there is a myth in the industry about cognition being impossible to solve, and we just can't regulate around it. And I don't think that is correct. So all these technology and all the things we have around us and all the features, if we don't understand how to use them, what's the point with the regulation as such? So I think that would be my. So sorry, that was 2 points, but.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. And Mathieu, what would be your prioritize? What's missing, and what would you like to see in your area?
I'm working for public service, so I don't fear the regulation. We are swimming into the regulation. We are trying to make it really relevant for the population. So no, I think the risk is to repeat myself. I guess that as far as we have a regulation that really force anyone who is pushing a media to think about its accessibility, then we have this question of the level of quality and accessibility we need to associate to this obligation. So I don't think that a media that will only give one sentence subtitled every 4 is doing a work of accessibility. So my main concern is that today it's very hard to define a regulation where the quality is such a subjective aspect. So at least we need to place the right words, like, for example, the text should perfectly reflect the meaning of the speech. Okay, there is no tool to assess the reality of this, but at least it's written. And at least if it's not respected, someone can blame the media. And I think this is something like that. We need, even it's not possible to be more than subjective. It's important to take this opportunity.
Thanks. Okay, then we have 3 different views. So we will turn on then to some questions from the chat, and then the first one I think is a bit for Susanna, but also maybe Mathieu and Sabine. It says in the EN 301-549 chapter 7, it defines requirements for subtitles and captions. And will this now also apply to live video? And will it apply to broadcasters linear program. I mean, Mathieu was into this a little bit on how we show captions and so on. Could you say something about this, Susanna?
Yes, the Act doesn't mention pre-recorded at all, so that means that live is also included, and the only exception is for pre-recorded videos that was pre-recorded and published before the adaptation, so before the 28th of June next year. So live is covered definitely.
Do you want to add something, Mathieu? No. We had another question on which is on movies. Do movies in the cinemas, do they have to be have captions in the language which they are shown? I mean, if it's an English video movie, would it need to have captions in English as well? Anyone knows about this? Mathieu?
Yeah, no, it's very short answer. It's an economical issue. I think each cinema owner has the opportunity to please its audience, and so we have the chance in France to have at least one cinema in each town which is proposing this kind of original version. But yeah, that's also a matter of maybe skills, or in every country it's different. In France 20 years ago, no one was able to see original language. Now it's changed. When I go to Scandinavia, it's not the same story at all. People are very, very easy with several other languages.
Yes, Susanna, do you know if the Act says anything about this?
No, it's unfortunately, languages are not covered in the legislation. Languages are always treated outside of accessibility, which is not perfect or ideal, but it's not in the Act. That kind of the translation part is not in the Act.
Yeah. But I mean, the question is, if it's a Swedish movie, should it also have Swedish captions when showed in Sweden? Will the Act say anything about that? I know in Sweden we have a sort of a voluntary agreement that there are Swedish captions on Swedish movies in most cinemas all the time, but that's voluntary. But the Act doesn't say anything about this.
Not specific on that, no.
No. Okay. Well, we have another question here about this, especially on Portugal. Ricardo, he said, in Portugal, we do not see captions on channels, not on radios, not on podcasts. Does anyone know anything special about Portugal? Are they sort of a black sheep in Europe? Anyone wants to comment on that? No, maybe not.
According to me, it's a local regulation. Local regulation is actually enforced. So yeah, there is no transposition of the European Act into our local obligations for now.
Yeah. Well, sorry, then, Ricardo, we cannot give a thorough answer on that, but I think Portugal is a member of the Union, so of course they should follow the directives that are. So, Susanna, you wanted to add something?
No, it was just the only specific knowledge I have about Portugal, more than being a lovely country, is that they have had issues when implementing the UN CRPD when it comes to employment and assistive technology in the workspace. I know that there has been legal issues around that, but I haven't heard anything specific on captions in Portugal. I'm sorry.
You mentioned employment there, and we do have another question on employment and the hiring process. And the question is if the European you have to sort of make phone inquiries, and you can have interviews by phone, and it's all by voice. It's very few possibilities to use chats and that kind of features. Is this something that the European Accessibility Act will make it easier to use in writing to apply for jobs? Anyone knows about this?
I mean, I'm not aware that this will be covered by the European legislation, but I mean, having accessible hiring process is an issue in and of itself. That is not, I mean, we have some national legislations, right? In some countries it's covered, it's not European legislation. And I think, unfortunately, for the moment, it's still the onus on the person with disability to ask for reasonable accommodation in the hiring process. So you would have to tell them, for me, a phone call is difficult. I need WhatsApp chat, or I need a medium where I have subtitling. But I'm not aware that we have European legislation on that yet.
I mean, we could hope that the Accessibility Act fosters innovation so that we will have better technology, and that kind of the spillover effect that the Commission is often talking about, so that with better technology and better solutions, that more recruiters would start using technology, but it's not covered in the Act, so we can't force them with the legislation. But as Sabine says, this is usually in the anti-discrimination regulations in each member state, so it would differ a little bit what you can do and to what extent you could complain or make a legal application about that.
Yeah, but in any case, I mean, I can just, in this case, only talk about the Austrian situation. And right now, companies are really open to hiring qualified people with disabilities, but there is a lot of ignorance on how would that look like? How can I make my hiring process accessible? So again, it is on the person applying to let them know, I need a certain accommodation to communicate with you. Unfortunately, that's still the case.
Yes, well, I know from other work that I'm involved in with the disability platform with the Commission, that this is a question that about accessible hiring processes is a question that they're dealing with in other kind of legislation which is related to discrimination, but it's not into this Accessibility Act.
There are only guidelines. So in the disability employment package, for example, that is certainly something that is covered there, but that's not a legislation. That is more guidelines and recommendations, but it's not a law that can be enforced yet.
No, but we are from the disability movement trying to sort of push this into the disability strategy from which will be a new one from 2026 to 2031. But this will be a prioritized issue in that. So hopefully there will be a change. We have another question here from Oran O'Neill about if this EAA covers it also companies outside the European Union. When they sell things in the European Union, are they then covered?
Yes, that's the beauty of this legislation. It does cover also the big ones in the US. If they want to sell in the European Union, they need to comply with our legislation.
That's very good. And then I have a question on that. What is your view about big tech? I mean, Google, Microsoft, Apple, and those on Facebook. Are they interested in accessibility, and are they sort of moving into this area, or are they always forced to become accessible? What were you saying, Sabine?
So I think in particular, the big tech companies, they have discovered accessibility as a competitive advantage. So certainly the ones you named, the big ones, Google, Apple, Samsung, Microsoft, they move beyond the legislation, and they're most of the time ahead of it. In particular, if you look at the smartphones, they have a lot more than what is prescribed in the legislation right now, because again, they discovered that this is a big market. So definitely for the tech companies, I would agree. For other sectors, different. I mean, ICT, of course, is also the sector where you can implement it comparatively the easiest, because the software and the digital accessibility has moved so wide, has come so far. Other areas, other industry sectors, much more difficult. But ICT and tech companies, yes, definitely proactive in accessibility.
And Susanna, could you add anything?
Yeah, I see two things. So when in the years leading up to the Web Accessibility Directive, we heard from especially from the disability community, that they kind of trusted the public sector to do the right thing. So this legislation would just be a gentle push in the right direction. And I was working through the whole transposition and negotiation and all of that. And I was very surprised when in September 2018, public sector all of a sudden woke up and say, hey, why didn't anyone tell me about this? And they were not prepared. Very few of them were prepared. And that was very surprising to me. And now in the time leading up to the European Accessibility Act, we see I do 3 presentations on the Act today. I do at least 5 a week. We do trainings. There's so much activities around this. So definitely companies are very much more aware than the public sector ever was in the same time frame. So I'm quite positive that companies, many of them, try to do the right thing. Will they do it in time? Will all of them spend the money or prioritize the right thing? That remains to be seen. But I agree with Sabine, the really big ones, they are actually leading in many of these things and doing a lot of research. So I don't think we can discuss big tech from many aspects, but I think in accessibility, most of them are doing a really good job. That doesn't mean that they're perfect, but they are definitely pushing the boundaries and doing a lot of innovation. I'm more worried of the kind of mid-sized companies that are looking more at maybe the return on investment here, and not always believing Sabine when she says that this is a good way to also earn money and reach more customers. Not all of them have kind of understood that yet, but they will, of course.
Yes, I think from Apple's side, we do have we think rather good sort of relations with Microsoft, Google, and also with Apple nowadays. They're interested in our views because hard of hearing issues is not their sort of hometown, but so sometimes we sort of get invitations to be present. So we have a question from several aspects and several participants here, and also from our president Lydia. The question is on subtitles, especially live subtitles. Are there standards on the aspects of sort of how much can it be delayed, how many words has to be sort of shown, the speed and so on? Is there a standard on that everyone has to follow? Could Mathieu say something?
Yes, there are rules potentially different in every country concerning the delay. As I mentioned in my presentation, this is one of the most important quality criteria. Actually, not all the channels have understood that when delaying the video and the audio to propose a subtitle in sync, even for a live news show or for political debate, would help the hard of hearing people. So they just let the audio and video like this broadcast the fastest possible, and then the hard of hearing audience has to deal with 10 to 12 seconds of delay between the audio and the text. For the Olympics this year in France, we had a pure digital channel which was dedicated to the Olympics, and because it was digital only, the delay, the native delay to push the signal from the TV to the smartphones and the PCs and so on was so high, something like 50 seconds. When the broadcast is about 10 seconds, 12 seconds only delayed. So when you already have 50 seconds delay, okay, it's really easy to deal with the journalist and to say, give me 15 more seconds and I will provide a perfect accessible signal. So I had the chance to have it. So that was the very first time in France we could have a live channel with synchronized live subtitling. No, unfortunately, our 2 main broadcast channels remain not delayed. So yeah, the experience was still poor. But I am now pushing on this aspect to be sure that the next time we will rediscuss this, we will really capitalize on this Olympic experience, because the feedback was also very good.
Yes, I think there's a very important issue you're raising here, and I know that the BBC is using when they broadcast in high definition TV. There's also a big delay, and they use that to get live text to be more synchronized and more direct, and that's a technical possibility that is there. We've been discussing this in Sweden with the Swedish broadcasters as well, but well, they don't want to use it. But maybe you could set an example. I mean, you did good job with the Olympics. I think many people were very pleased with the broadcast from the Olympics in Paris.
What we are doing today is after each live, we have an AI processing that is resyncing the text. So that means the replay platform brings a good experience with a in-sync, perfectly synced text. And some broadcasters, Francesc in the chat just say that potentially the Belgium Flemish broadcaster is doing its best for proposing an in-sync live show. And I think that it's just a matter of good understanding about the cause of hard of hearing. Sometimes it's just by having an hard of hearing man or woman at the right place that changed everything in the channel. So yeah, that's exactly what we need to push.
Yeah, the end user, that's what we always say. You have to involve the end user from the start. Okay, time is running out, so I will give you a chance to sort of wrap up if there's something you would like to say before we summarize the day. So I will start with Sabine. What would be your sort of end words for today's webinar?
Well, my end words are just the invitation. If you have questions, if you want to participate in a feature review, but also I know that using a mobile phone and speaking on a mobile phone with hearing aids, with the compatibility with hard of hearing, it's never easy because the spectrum is just so broad and everyone has a different facet of needs. But if you have specific questions, do go to the GARI database. We also have the contact details there, send it through. We do the best to respond. And also if there are additional features you want to see included in the database, let us know. We're happy to do that. And other than that, we are also following the Federation and attending the webinars because that is a source for us to learn and to also get to know new aspects that we need to integrate in the future. So on one hand, the request, please share your information with us. And on the other, a big thank you that you do that actually.
Thank you, Sabine. Thank you. Okay, Susanna, what would be your final words?
Well, if anyone has time and interest to follow the standardization work, we are doing this in a transparent way now. We got criticism in the last round of the previous mandate, but since I'm now the chair, I can decide things, and that means that we are now totally transparent. So there is a GitLab channel for those of you who don't have a life and want to work with standards. It takes time, but it's I mean, it is interesting, and we do need not only expert views, but really end user views on this. And as you may know, we do not have enough end users represented in the standardization committee. So that is really a way to make your voice heard and also to learn a lot of things. Standards seem boring, but it is really extremely interesting. So please consider contributing to standards, or at least follow what is happening in the GitLab channel. I can share that in the chat. And then I think really what may be difficult, and I feel that I'm not a good example of this always myself, but I think to be a little bit curious and look at what's out there, because I really think there are so much interesting happening in technology right now that there is a good chance that there is something better for you and for your needs out there. So ask somebody, ask Alf, he knows everything, or ask somebody in your local community and try to find a better solution, because there is a lot of technology out there, and really, I know it's a learning curve and it takes time and all of that, and it's hard, I know, but that is really my suggestion, to try some new tech and gadgets and see if you can find something that makes life a little easier.
Thank you, Susanna. Yeah, I think involvement in standardization is important, and there's always a public consultation round before a new standard is launched. So if you just keep into, and it's very good news that you are doing this in a more open way, because tradition in standardization has been closed rooms, so on, for many years. Okay, Mathieu, what would be your final words?
It's a big thank you. I think it's very easy. I'm a late newcomer to this initiative, and I really thank all of you for wider the audience and bring more people to this really good initiative. This is everyone. Thanks.
Okay, thank you then, speakers. This is an ongoing work, and we will meet again, I hope. And I wonder if our President Lydia, would you like to say some final words before we leave for today?
Thank you very much. I'm here and I've been listening and I've been tweeting, so hopefully the discussion will be picked up as well. It's been absolute pleasure to listen to all of you and sharing your knowledge with our members and also wider public, because honestly, we need more people to be aware. And I think the best one was especially the question about how European Accessibility Act is, more like, will European Accessibility Act be required also to the countries which are not in the European Union, but the services from those countries are trying to sell services in European Union? And I think that that is the whole beauty of it, because in fact, you want to do a business in European Union, you need to be accessible. And that is the message. So we look forward to what is happening next year. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and see you out there. Thank you.
Thank you.